Are you overprocessed, losing your hair, and looking for a new therapist? Well, the Stylist chair is where client confessions and declarations are made. The place where confusion is detangled, new shades of confidence is created, smudges are cleansed away, and edges are relaxed. Most importantly, it's the place where we gently cut away our unhealthy past and start the process of restoration, all in an effort to prevent further damage. My name is LYNN Thatcher, and I am your creative stylist, restorative hair care specialist, and confidence coach. While creating a culture that cultivates the mind, body, and soul, I advocate for being intentional in your pursuit of confidence and personal development. I specialize in unwrapping the layers of low self-esteem and depositing high volumes of confidence. Welcome to your scheduled appointment at From the Stylist Chair podcast, the place where we are building confidence one head at a time. The salon is now open and all walk-ins are welcome. So come on in and don't forget to grab a towel just in case you get some water in your eyes. Have a seat in my chair and let's talk hair. Hello and welcome to your weekly scheduled appointment at From the Stylist Chair podcast, the place where we are building confidence one head at a time. I am your host, LYNN Thatcher, and joining me today is none other than Mr. Gregg Harrison.
Wow. I like that introduction.
You like it?
I almost want to meet that person myself.
Oh my goodness, that is too funny. That is too funny. So I met Mr. Gregg about 5 years ago.
When I first came out there with Michelle, when you had the shop out there in Montgomery.
So at least 5 years ago.
At least, if not longer. You had the shop out there. Your hair was a different color. You were in a smaller room. And I came in to see what your setup was like because you were getting ready to do my wife's hair.
Yeah.
So I wanted to check everything out.
You had to make sure it was legit.
It was legit. And you were legit. You were
legit.
When she came from that appointment, you look good.
All right. Well, that's what's important.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So yeah, as he said, we met through his wife, Michelle. And Mr. Gregg also spoke at one of our Color Yourself Confident experiences, and the theme was Shades of Confidence.
Shades of Confidence.
You remember that?
I remember that.
And so he was one of our panel guests, and we talked about, what did we talk about?
Well, then we ended up spending more time than we thought we would on dark, light skin.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. Yeah, just that whole history behind colorism.
Colorism and between and amongst black people, how we looked at dark-skinned people and automatically made some values.
Yeah.
And then we look at the light skin and how we automatically valued and wanted them. Especially, I think I started sharing my point as a male back then, the way I was brought up, was that most of my dad's friends around me, all of their wives except for maybe one, was very, very, very light skinned.
Yeah.
One was kind of a brown like Michelle's color.
Yeah.
But most of them, and they were professionals, they were doctors, dentists, lawyers, judges, all of that. And every one of them had a very, very light skinned wife. In fact, we had a term for them. At least my dad told me the term for them was called blowies. And that was because they had the hair that would naturally blow. You can blow in the wind. Not with the, not after you put the comb to or anything, but they had that certain kind of hair and it would blow. And I'm so surprised, I'm laughing at myself that all this is coming back, thinking about my dad, my mom, and all those doctors and judges. They were all professionals. And that was the type of person they would go for a wife. She was educated.
Yeah.
She was very light skinned. and she carried herself like they were the model for the Cosby. What's her name? The lady on Cosby.
Felicia Rashad.
Felicia, yes. Felicia Rashad pretty much not imitated. She was a picture of what those wives look like then.
Yeah, I can definitely, if I look at some history, the same patterns, similar, for sure.
And I look back and I had to get real personal and ask myself. I started going the opposite direction of making sure most of the ladies I started dating were brown and dark skinned. But I think I confessed at that panel that one time I did it just because I was in rebellion against my dad, because we had a party at the house with his friends, and the lady I was dating at the time was about 6 foot, maybe 6'1", very, very, very beautiful, dark skin. And I remember I brought her into the room downstairs where they're having the party, and so many people just stopped and looked. And then they start coming up to her and saying, "You're so beautiful, you're so this and this and that." And I remember standing to the side thinking, as if you're surprised, she's beautiful because she's dark skinned.
Right.
And you know, those conversations we've had amongst ourselves, people and stuff, that we finally grown past that. Because I don't want this to be so much about colorism, but it might go there.
And that's what I'm sitting here like, well, wait a minute. We might be going there.
Yeah, we just might, because there are still things that make me say, as whatever word, black people, we go back and we start imitating what we see from European. We start valuing more what came from the European countries and putting that up there, and then we jump through hoops and flips trying to make things that our people did, try to come up to it. But
hey, I'm like, let's go ahead and get into it. I mean, because like I said, however this conversation flows, we can just go with it today, because actually the actual title of this episode, it still fits with everything that you just said. So the title of this episode is called Deep Conditioning.
Deep Conditioning, okay. Oh my goodness, how we are. Put my book in the side. I might have to take a note or two, but
yeah, deep conditioning. And so yeah, you starting a conversation like that just basically threw all my notes out the door, which is fine. And so to all of you all who are new to listening to the podcast, one thing about me is I'm a notes kind of girl. Everywhere I go, everything I do, I have notes. So that's how I stay on track, because otherwise, who knows what would happen. So anyway, blew my notes out the water, even though I didn't have very many. But, and one of the things that I did write down is that as I, was talking about this, or just thinking about this topic, that it definitely could be spent in so many different directions, right? And so always with the title itself, I like to start with just giving a little bit of education about what it means in the salon setting. Just, what deep conditioning actually is, and then how, we can relate that to what we're talking about, or just everyday life, right?
Sounds great.
So usually if a client is experiencing like extremely dry hair, dull hair, usually it's a sign that some type of treatment is needed. Some type of conditioning treatment is needed. And so when you receive those different types of treatments, whether they're hydrating treatments, moisturizing treatments, you have protein treatments, you have bond building treatments, like there's so many different treatments depending on the need of the hair is going to add moisture, hydration, strength back into the hair.
Strength.
Yes. Shine back into the hair. It's gonna have life. It's gonna give the hair more life, right? And so if you don't tend to the hair in that manner, if you don't give it its correct treatment, then the hair can become brittle, it'll break off, it'll be sometimes beyond repair, so you'll have to cut it. So when you think about some of what I just said, let me say this first. So From the Stylist Chair podcast is about shifting mindsets, right? It's about mental and emotional health. It's about how your current way of thinking or habits that you may have because maybe you picked them up from, you know, prior generations or whatever, how that way of functioning is affecting your confidence and how it's preventing you from being your authentic self. So that's the premise of what the podcast itself is about. So going back to our topic, so deep conditioning, there was a word that I said that stuck out to you. So tell me what came to your mind.
Okay, the deep conditioning, I'm saying we as black people, whatever word we want to use, black, Negro, and I'm old enough to have gone through all these terms, Negro, colored, etc. We have from outside sources around us, of the other people, I'm just gonna say other people, so I don't want to offend people just right now. We have let them condition us to think some things about ourselves that is not true. It's as simple as that. They continually try to attach negative to the word black, and when they see people, automatically these things that are negative come up in their mind. And I know I have been conditioned because I was brought up in a pretty much, once I entered 5th and 6th grade, pretty much all white environment, being the first black person at this school, the first male at this school, and the only one on that school ground. And I think I shared with you once before, having the first month, the principal of that school would have to walk me down the hallway to my class and make sure I arrived safely. People wouldn't drink after me at the water faucets. I had my own bathroom, which was the janitor's bathroom, because the other people didn't want to walk and use anything behind me. But in all that, I was strengthened enough at home from my parents and my 2 older sisters to say, you have to walk this because other people will come behind you. Immediately, my 2 younger sisters will come behind me. So we had to let the people know we're here, we're not going anywhere. So you have to deal with that. But we're being conditioned. They were trying to condition us to think there was something wrong with us. But my parents and other people around us were strong enough to say that's not true. Meaning to the point, I never ever wished I was a different race or color. Even in the midst of that, I just wish they would leave me alone. And as we take that through, we keep going to places where we feel like we have to justify ourselves for being, even now in these days, we call them Karens, justify ourselves out in the front lawn doing a natural act, cutting the lawn, watering the lawn. The young lady who was selling Kool-Aids or whatever, that we have to justify ourselves to the system. Because we've been so deep conditioned, and unfortunately a lot of it is true. If we're not careful, we'll end up on the negative side of these events. But if you look at what we've come through from the time, and I'm getting ready to go back there, thank you Lord, from the time we come off the ship, from the time they stole us and brought us here in Plymouth Rock, and all the things we've gone through, all the states they took us through, and all, and I say states, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, etc., listen to your great-grandparents if you get a chance to talk about the things they went through. And here we are. We keep bouncing back. We are resilient people. We are so resilient. which says when you do the hair, sometimes you look at a hair and you're like, this is a mess. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But because of your expertise and also your love for hair and what you're doing, you put the ingredients and everything together. And that lady or that man comes out of your shop is like, I'm glad I went to her. Look what she did. Just not only for my hair, because that seeps all the way down into who you are, how you perceive yourself. And so I would start at your shop as a safe place.
Okay.
I could come in, I could talk, I could share. And from listening to you and some other ladies, I believe they say the same thing. They can come in and be real, be 100.
Yeah.
And you're going to listen to them. You're going to give them information, direction. You don't browbeat anybody. I've watched you and you make people think and reflect and say, you know what, that's right. I shouldn't have to go through this. And then you two have made another connection and you start working on that hair, working on that attitude, working on their subconscious. You start bringing the awesome things about Black people and the women that come in here. And I haven't seen the other men, but the people come to you and starts coming out. So I wish there was a camera that would show the before and after. They come in and they sit down and say, okay, what are you going to do to my hair? And then when they're done, it's like, you know what?
Great.
This is me. This is the me I like and appreciate. I'm so glad you dig deep. You digged in deep.
Yeah.
Never mind the proper English. You digged in deep and you got it. And here I am. And I'm going to tell somebody else.
Yeah.
And even if I don't tell them necessarily about, now you have to go to her and get your hair done, I'm able to take that attitude and start being contagious with other people around me.
Yeah.
Because I know I've left this shop and had to go back to work and deal with people. But after I left, I said, you know what? That's right. Corey and I had an awesome conversation, and she reminded me of who I am in the Lord and in my roots. You don't have to accept me. Now here's what we're getting ready to do.
Yeah.
Yes, this is my department. This is what we're getting ready to do. And I'm not going to say, let me justify to you why I'm asking you to do ABC and did. It's like, here we are.
Yeah.
So this whole thing, this is so therapeutic. And I believe this is one of the reasons in Black America why we spend more money on the hair and things that go along with it. We will. It's part of our culture. It's part of us, and it's a positive thing about us. That's why they have so many movies about barbershops. Never mind the other shenanigans that go on, but in the barbershops, in the hair salons, because we can relate to it. And we've had many experiences. We go in, and I remember the interchanges with the guys, the barber, the hairdresser, the person, sometimes even doing their nails. So we as Black people have to continually encourage ourselves. So that's why we always talk about getting around positive people who bring the best out of you. And when you consistently around those people who tear down everything they have is just negative, they say distance yourself from them. And if you really can, if they're at work, you got to come up with different strategies. But I like this podcast because I want you to be able to start talking to people about mental health things, barriers. Call them out before it's too big for them to jump over. And I think this was one of the things you were talking about, the hair. Now my mind is hair therapy, but you called it something else.
Oh, the certification that I took, psychotherapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We need more of that.
Yeah.
So the people could come in, sit, and you make them remember, realize, okay, I remember what I went through, but I also realize there's a thing I always call hope. And you keep pulling it out and putting it in and pulling it out. You plant those seeds, and that's why your shop needs to be bigger to some degree. But we'll see where the Lord takes you. We'll see where He takes with all this. But this is really very therapeutic and necessary for our people. I love it.
So with all of that being said, so I always say for me, like in realizing what I'm called to and marrying that, for lack of a better word, with, you know, my passion of arts of all kinds. You know, hair is definitely, it's an art. And so in knowing that behind the chair, Like today, I sit in the chair. When you sit in the chair, you receive something from the chair. But when I'm behind the chair, like that is me doing ministry from behind the chair. So with this being similar to being in an actual pulpit in the church, you know what that's like.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I do.
So what's my question? So there are similarities to both. However, there's only so much that we can do here. But a lot of times we only focus on here. So everything that you just mentioned about, you know, people needing this and what people get from being in the salon and in the barber shop, or we can even say being in church, as it pertains to those people that may never step foot in none of those places. They may never come in here. They may never go in the barber shop because their cousin is cutting their hair at home.
Right.
You know, they may never step foot in church, inside the church walls.
You're right.
How do we then take those things that you just talked about and take it beyond here?
Out of the structures. Easy question to ask. Now, I thought about that.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this episode entitled Deep Conditioning. I know you felt like that was a teaser and we were just getting started, but meet us back here next week as Mr. Gregg talks about getting to the root of the problem and providing restoration beyond the chair.